My girlfriend lied about being single to her friends and tried to ruin my career after I dumped her. So I exposed her, and she lost everything. I'd been with my girlfriend for 2 years, and for most of that time, I thought everything was fine. She was outgoing and always seemed to light up the room. People loved her, and I loved her too. But as time went on, I started to notice cracks. Little things at first. A dismissive comment here, a strange excuse there. I brushed them off because I figured no relationship is perfect. Things started to change when she got close with a new group of friends she'd met through a mutual acquaintance. They were all single, loud, and fun-loving. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone needs their own social circle, right? But then I noticed that every time she went out with them, I wouldn't hear from her. If I messaged her, she'd reply hours later with something short, like busy or talk later. It wasn't like her. One night, I decided to check her Instagram stories while she was out. I saw her laughing with her friends at some rooftop bar, clinking glasses, and the caption read, "Single Ladies Night Out." It stopped me in my tracks. I scrolled through the rest of her stories, and it was more of the same. Dancing, laughing, posing with her friends. No mention of me. But it kept happening. Every time she was out with them, she'd post about her single life. After the third time, I decided I couldn't keep quiet. The next day, I asked her about it. "Why do you keep saying you're single when you're with your friends?" I said. "What's going on?" She rolled her eyes. "It's just for fun. They're all single, and I don't want to be the odd one out." "That doesn't make sense," I said. "Why does being with them mean you have to pretend you're not in a relationship?" "It's not a big deal," she said. "You're overreacting. It's just a joke." "It doesn't feel like a joke," I said. "It feels like you're hiding me." She laughed and said, "You're being so dramatic. Relax." I didn't push it any further that day, but it stayed in the back of my mind. It didn't feel right. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just about the Instagram posts. It was about respect. If she didn't respect our relationship enough to acknowledge it around her friends, then what was the point? A couple of weeks later, she mentioned that one of her friends was throwing a party. I asked if she wanted me to come, and she immediately said, "No, it's a girls-only thing." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. The day of the party, she left her phone on the counter while she was in the shower. I don't know what made me do it, but I opened her group chat with these friends. One of them had asked if she was bringing me to the party. Her response was, "Lol, no, they don't even know I have a boyfriend. Let's keep it that way." I felt like an idiot. 2 years together, and she was pretending I didn't exist. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she lied about me, or the fact that she thought it was funny. That night, I told her we needed to talk. I kept my voice calm, but inside I was boiling. "Why are you lying to your friends about me?" I asked. "Why are you pretending you're single?" She shrugged. "You're reading way too much into this. It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal," I said. "You're lying about our relationship. If you can't be honest with your friends, then what does that say about us?" "You're being insecure," she said. "This is exactly why I don't tell them about you. You're too controlling." I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. "You're calling me controlling because I want you to acknowledge our relationship? That's not control. That's basic respect." She threw up her hands. "Fine, whatever. If you're so unhappy, maybe we shouldn't be together." "Maybe you're right," I said. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sat there for a long time, wondering how things had gotten to this point. The next day, I texted her and told her I needed a break. She didn't take it well. She sent me a dozen angry messages, accusing me of being dramatic and selfish. When I didn't respond, she left me a voicemail, crying about how I was throwing away everything we had. I almost caved, but then I remembered her texts to her friends, the lies, the way she dismissed my feelings. I knew I couldn't go back. What I didn't realize was that breaking up with her was only the beginning. 2 weeks after the breakup, I got called into my boss's office. He said someone had contacted him through a mutual connection, claiming I was emotionally unstable and unfit for the promotion I was up for. I asked who it was, and he gave me the name, It was one of her friends. When I got home, I pieced it together. She'd gone to one of her friends, fed them some sob story about how I was unstable, and convinced them to contact my boss. I couldn't believe it. She'd never cared about my job before, but now she was trying to ruin it. I told my boss everything. I showed him screenshots of her texts and explained the situation. He believed me and assured me it wouldn't affect my chances for the promotion. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I called the mutual connection she'd used to contact my boss and told them the full story. They were horrified and promised to cut ties with her. I also spoke to HR and made sure everything was documented in case she tried anything else. When she realized her plan hadn't worked, she sent me a text. "I heard you've been talking about me to people. That's not cool." I didn't respond. I was done playing her games. But she wasn't done. A week later, a friend messaged me saying, "Hey, have you seen these posts about you in the local community group?" I hadn't, so they sent me screenshots. It was an anonymous account, but the posts accused me of being abusive and manipulative in my relationship. They didn't mention my name directly, but there were enough details for people to figure out it was about me. I reported the account to the group admins and worked with them to trace the IP address. It led straight back to her. I gathered all the evidence, screenshots of the posts, the IP information, and texts proving her behavior, and sent her a cease and desist letter through a lawyer. The posts disappeared the next day. To make sure the truth was out there, I made a public post on my private social media, explaining what had happened and attaching proof of her lies. People rallied behind me, and her smear campaign fell apart. 2 months later, she texted me out of the blue, saying she was pregnant. She said she wanted to work things out for the sake of the baby. I didn't believe her, but I agreed to meet. I needed to be sure. When we met, she launched into this whole story about how she just found out and how she wanted to do the right thing. But the details didn't add up. When I suggested we confirm everything with a doctor, she got defensive and left. Later, one of our mutual friends told me she'd admitted to faking the pregnancy to get me back. I confronted her through text, telling her I knew the truth and that if she didn't leave me alone, I'd file for harassment. She backed off, but only for a while. Not long after the fake pregnancy stunt, I started hearing from mutual friends that I supposedly owed her money. She was telling people that I had borrowed thousands of dollars from her to pay rent and bills while we were together and that I hadn't paid her back. To make it more believable, she'd even shown some of them a fake loan agreement as proof. One of my friends, who almost fell for her scam, reached out to me and asked, "Hey, what's this about you owing her money? She says she's struggling because you haven't paid her back." I was stunned. Not only had I never borrowed money from her, but I'd actually paid for most of our dates and outings while we were together. I immediately collected all my financial records, including bank statements, and sent them to my friend. I also shared screenshots of texts from when we were dating that clearly showed she'd never loaned me money. Then I went a step further. I reached out to a lawyer who drafted a formal letter warning her that any further false claims about money would result in legal action. I sent that to her, along with copies of my financial records, and made it clear that if she didn't stop spreading lies, I'd take her to court. At the same time, I made sure our mutual friends knew the truth. I showed them the evidence, including the fake loan agreement she'd created, and explained how she'd tried to con one of them into giving her money. That was the final nail in the coffin for her social circle. Anyone who hadn't already cut ties with her immediately distanced themselves. But she still wasn't done. One evening, I came home to find her sitting on my couch. I froze. She didn't have a key, or so I thought. When I asked her how she got in, she smirked and said, "I still have the spare key you gave me." That's when it hit me. She'd taken my spare key months ago and never returned it. I told her to leave, but she refused. "I have every right to be here," she said. "I practically lived here when we were together." "No, you didn't," I said. "This is my apartment and you're trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." She rolled her eyes and said, "You're being ridiculous. I just want to talk." I walked out of the room, called the police, and waited outside until they arrived. When they showed up, I explained the situation and showed them proof that she didn't live there. She tried to argue, saying she had a right to be there because we dated, but the officers weren't buying it. They escorted her out and warned her not to come back. The next day, I changed my locks and sent her one final text. If you come near me or my property again, I'll file for a restraining order. This is your last warning. After that, she finally left me alone. Looking back, I can't believe how many red flags I ignored in those 2 years. She had a way of making me feel like I was the problem, like I was overreacting to her behavior. But the truth is, she was the one who crossed every line. Walking away from her was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most freeing. I learned that you can't let someone walk all over you, no matter how much you care about them. If someone doesn't respect you, they don't deserve a place in your life. And if they try to take you down after you leave, fight back. You're worth it.